Continue reaction to some of the appointments by Donald Trump in this transition.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Nice to have you aboard. We'll get some reaction tonight from some pretty smart folks on the environment. You know, this controversial pick to head the EPA, and it is a controversial pick, no doubt, has a lot of people worried that there's a reverse in course going on. What's really interesting is the divide between Democrats and Republicans when it comes to environmental issues, and we'll talk about that. Great to have you aboard. Thanks very much for tuning in. Let's quickly run to the rundown camera and see what's going on. Now, we mentioned this yesterday, and it just deserves a little bit more attention. This is a major league economic project going on in the city of Providence at 195. Take a look at a couple of headlines here. I guess we have a headline there somewhere. There it is. Brown needs space and leases 2 floors. You know, it's interesting. The building that they are growing from is the building that was actually destined to be knocked down if we were going to build a stadium there. So things are fluid at 195, no doubt. Here's what Eyewitness News has reported so far.
The governor held a press conference in downtown Providence Tuesday morning announcing big plans.
This is a big day.
The I-195 Redevelopment District Commission and the Rhode Island Commerce Corporation, in collaboration with Wexford Science and Technology, have signed letters of intent to create an innovation center and hotel on Providence's I-195 land.
We've been talking about this for years, and it hasn't happened.
On Monday night, the commission voted to give the Wexford development $19.5 million in taxpayer money to help pay for 2 buildings. But Tuesday's press conference focused more on the first building, a 191,000 square foot innovation center anchored by the Cambridge Innovation Center.
A couple years from now, you're going to see medical products being created, designed, and made in a building right next door because someone from Lifespan and URI or Johnson Wales or Brown has a great idea, and they're going to get together, they're going to develop it here, they're going to make it here, and they're going to employ a lot of people doing it.
Wexford is also expected to seek an additional $12.5 million in tax credits and will receive the land at no cost.
You know, it's interesting that the governor presses this as if she's the developer. And that's the problem that I have right now with this administration. They pick special partners, they create special tax deals, and you think that they were driving the specific brainstorms that are going on. What we need in this state is a fertile ground where the rate card, which by the way is not yet published in the city of Providence for 195 after all these years. In other words, you can't do a one-stop shop as a business person coming into the region saying, okay, that's pretty land right there for the city. What's it cost? There's no rate card. Everything is a special deal. And while, look, I get that other states are competitive in the same way in the idea that they incentivize via tax programs. But our opportunity is to create such fertile ground where you come here just because the deal's too good for everybody. Now, I would think that this is going to be at least a marginal success because these folks who have developed or are going to develop this Wexford project have developed others and been successful with it. And it's awful pretty, no doubt, and it'll add class to downtown. I've got no qualm with the project at all whatsoever. I have a qualm with the overall strategy. And by the way, there's just not that much money left to seed these things. I mean, 60 to 70% of the allocated money for the 195 land goes to this particular project. So the governor's she's good when she gets all excited about these economic projects, but she's not the developer. Governors aren't developers. They are scene setters. In the meantime, the transactional behavior of the transition team here for Donald Trump is, well, it's really kind of interesting. We now have yet another transactor who is going to head the State Department. And I find it fascinating. Chief executives are coming like crazy here, headlines will tell you. Between generals and CEOs, that seems to be what we're stocking leadership with. Here's the latest from CBS.
Merry Christmas. So Merry Christmas, everyone.
President-elect Donald Trump had a little Christmas cheer as he touted his pick to be Secretary of State. Mr. Trump says Rex Tillerson's rapport with world leaders, such as Russian President Vladimir Putin, is an asset.
Rex is friendly with many of the leaders in the world that we don't get along with, and some people don't like that.
Tillerson's close relationship with Putin will certainly be a focus during his Senate confirmation hearings.
This is a bipartisan concern that reflects the fact that for decades the American people have correctly viewed Russia as an adversary, not a close ally.
It would take just one Republican member on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee to vote with Democrats to block Tillerson's nomination. President-elect Trump will shift his focus to jobs when he hosts a summit this afternoon featuring leaders from some of the world's biggest tech companies.
The true giants of Silicon Valley. We're going to talk about how to grow jobs. We're going to talk about how they can stay on top. We're going to talk about a lot of great things.
Among the guests are Facebook's Sheryl Sandberg, Amazon's Jeff Bezos, Apple's Tim Cook, and Tesla's Elon Musk.
Look, you know, generating all sorts of brain power is a good thing. It seems like a healthy thing to me. Look, the Russia thing is the underpinning of this entire Secretary of State choice, right? And while Donald Trump continues to say that it's purely political, that there's some intel out there that Russia involved itself in this election, albeit with the DNC and maybe the RNC, but not leaking to WikiLeaks what the RNC emails had to say, he's got to get past this notion that this is a personal affront. Anytime we have foreign intervention in an election, it's a qualm for all of us. He was duly elected by the electoral votes, soon to be ratified by the Electoral College, despite some turbulence there. And what really needs to happen is he needs to chill, let these investigations go through, let breathing go on when it comes to Russia, and this nomination will have a much better chance. But if he continues to fight the concept that Russia is intervened, then the ally of Russia, the Exxon CEO, will have trouble getting appointed. We will have some expertise on this over the course of due time, I promise you on that. Speaking of picks to the administration, here are a couple of headlines on the EPA appointment, which are interesting. Scott Pruitt, who has been a guy who's been banging the EPA, ends up soon to be heading it. And then a second headline here. Yeah, same kind of stuff. Didn't quite read that one. You caught me on this one. But here's the thing. It has been since the Reagan administration since we had somebody who was so anti-EPA head the EPA. Here's the latest.
Oklahoma Attorney General Scott Pruitt, who Mr. Trump nominated to head the Environmental Protection Agency. Pruitt has previously sued the EPA to block what he called excessive regulation of natural resources.
I think the greatest impediment we have in the country today as far as economic growth is not tax policy, it's regulatory policy.
On his LinkedIn page, Pruitt calls himself a leading advocate against the EPA's activist agenda. And in an op-ed this past May, he wrote the debate over global warming is far from settled. The Sierra Club said having Pruitt in charge of the EPA is like putting an arsonist in charge of fighting fires.
All righty, so let's get some input on this, okay? Professor Timmons Roberts is from Brown University, works in the Climate and Development Lab there. The Climate and Development Lab, what is that?
That is my lab group. It's inside the Institute at Brown for Environment and Society, which is a larger institute. My lab involves 12 students, undergraduates, one doctoral student, and me, and some postdoctoral fellows occasionally.
What are you studying there?
Well, we go to the UN climate negotiations every year. So I bring these students with some funding that we've raised internally, and we go and study the process of the negotiation. How does the UN work? We do projects where we actually work with a research institute in the developing countries or in Europe, and we bring that piece of research to the negotiations. We conduct some research, put together policy briefings, white papers. We then turn those into scholarly articles and books. So the students get to be part of the research process. When they're at the negotiations, they're researching a certain topic while they're there, and they're embedded with organizations, UN organizations, with research institutes, again, from Bangladesh or from Africa or from Europe.
Do you have practical input into the worldwide debate?
If I only did, you know.
Is it just an exercise, or is it something that you think you've had some constructive
I appreciate that question.
With?
I think we're having more impact as the years go on. I started going in 2003 to the negotiations, and the reason why I keep going back is that it's really the leading sort of convention about, it's a trade show really about of different groups from private industries to research groups, NGOs, environmental non-governmental organizations, governments around the world, and then international organizations like the World Bank or the IMF or the UN, talking about how we're going to deal with this problem of climate change. It's fascinating.
It seems fascinating on a broad basis. Give me an executive summary, one cliff note before in this segment, and then we'll come right back with you and another smart guy on the environment. What's your concern about what's happening with the Trump appointments right now, and specifically Pruitt?
Yeah, so I would say it's extremely worrisome that if you listen to Donald J. Trump, the candidate, he was all over the place on climate change. I mean, I'm especially worried about climate change for my children, but also it's happening already. So it's not just our children anymore, now it's us. So I'm worried about climate change. On that issue, one count the other day.
You know what? Hold your thought, because that's enough. We're worried about climate change, and then we'll expand when we come back.
I was going to say 8 denialists and 3 anti-climate policy people.
You can say it when we come back.
Sure, I will.
More clearly. But time waits for nobody, especially when we got to do some business. I just want to run over here and let you know in this camera, if you're thinking about, with the holidays and Thanksgiving passed, and now you've got all these plans with folks coming over to the home this holiday season, you might say, you know what, that's it. We've had enough. It's about time that we change the way the house works, how the traffic flows, how the family celebrates and gets together, how breakfast gets done. In other words, kitchen, renovation, perhaps bath as well. On time and on budget, it was for me. Have a designer come to your home, no charge, and evaluate the situation. Before you know it, you'll be off and running, adding quality of life and value to your home with Cumberland Kitchen Bath Design Center. Be right back.
He's been extremely aggressive in trying to attempt to provide a level playing field, a balanced field, and a balanced approach, more of a level approach.
There's some local reaction. That is the Tulsa, Oklahoma Chamber of Commerce president talking about his own attorney general, who has been nominated to the EPA director's seat. Topher Hamblett joins us. He's director of Advocacy and Policy for Save the Bay. Been here before. Good to see you again.
Good to see you as well.
Always worried about the quality of the water around here, right? So we'll just have you in the conversation. We don't have to be formal here. Let's just get to it. You were saying you're really concerned about this EPA pick when it comes to climate change.
Correct. It's part of a pattern, though. I was saying Donald Trump is all over the place on environment. If you listen to his original speech when he started his campaign, he said he wanted to hold China to tighter environmental laws and labor laws. That he did not sound like he was anti-environment. In the past, he's been fairly good on climate change. But the people that he's appointing are arguably pretty extreme on this issue. They're, for example, one count had about 8 denialists have now been picked for his cabinet. About 3 people are anti any meaningful climate policy, and only 2.
When you call them denialists, you're talking about denying that climate change is a serious matter.
Exactly. Yeah. Either denying that the science is more or less settled with the thousands and thousands of studies, or denying that it's something that we should worry about.
All right, well, the essence of this, and you guys just kind of pile in here, there are multiple issues that are involved in the environment. Obviously, climate change is the national and worldwide conversation. The real motive here is deregulation of getting business done. And of course, the more Midwest you get, more the perspective becomes, hey, listen, get out of our hair and let's get stuff done. Are you more worried about climate change or deregulation as it goes to making the water clean? What's your concern?
I'm deeply worried personally about climate change. In terms of the question of regulations is a serious one. It does take a long time. It's quite a process to undo regulations that have so far been very effective in helping to keep our water clean and our air clean. And I think in Rhode Island, we're going to have to take care of our own shop here when it comes to protecting those investments that we've made. We spent a lot of money, time, energy taking Narragansett Bay from a open sewer to something that everyone can use just about everywhere.
Sure.
And we cannot let up. And in fact, I would suggest that we have to actually do more to protect it through enforcement and through investments.
Well, where are we? Are in terms of who the heavy is when it comes to environmental protection? Are we more federally leaning or are we more state leaning at this point?
So we are, the Environmental Protection Agency is the federal agency that controls the New England environmental regulatory environment. But The state is what's called a delegated state. So this Department of Environmental Management is charged with implementing federal programs like the Clean Water Act and the Clean Air Act. And some of this we do very well. I would say that some of this we need to do a lot better. Enforcement capacity has dropped off significantly in the last 10 years through budget cuts. And I would suggest to the governor and the General Assembly it's time to look at that and do something about that, reverse that trend, especially given what's going on in Washington.
Do you have a specific nut in mind, a dollar amount? How short are we?
Well, when it comes to enforcement, we've lost about a third of our enforcement staff. We need to really add probably 5 to 10 people. I will say this, though, in enforcement, which means inspectors and attorneys, those people sometimes pay for themselves because they are actually tracking down and prosecuting environmental crimes, which come with fines. So it's not like it's a budget buster by any means. And I think we can, given what else we spend money on around here, I think we can find money to take care of the fundamentals here in Rhode Island.
Thought on that?
I would strongly support the fact that investments in the quality of our water, whether people will go to the beaches, whether they'll come to Rhode Island as a tourist destination, whether they'll want to live here. Personally, I'm out there rowing on the Seekonk River in the top of the bay every other day in a sculling boat, and that water quality makes all the difference. The life that, the fish, the birds, if I fall in the water, it used to be that people would, be afraid of having nasty fungus and infections, viruses, whatever, from sewage, making them sick. And now, I've got my daughters out there, and the people are rowing in the bay, they're out sailing, and I think it's absolutely a net gain for the state's economy to protect our water. And I think that the issue is that the EPA is likely to become sort of missing in action. It's Scott Pruitt's, really his argument largely is let the states do it. States know how to do this better. And I would say in the case of Rhode Island, it may be the case that Rhode Island is strong enough, our Department of Environmental Management, but that we need to make sure it's an agency with the resources it needs to do that job of protecting our water, protecting our air.
Right. When we come
Other
back,
states, it may not be the case.
Sure. When we come back, Sheldon White House weighed in on this, of course. The whole delegation's not too happy with anything that Donald Trump is doing. We'll be right back. The director of the EPA, Sheldon White House, minces no words here. Rhode Island federal officials have the luxury of just spouting off, by the way, because they are hardly unelectable or reelectable. It's both a blessing and a curse in some ways. But for the most part, Sheldon says, at every turn, Scott Pruitt has chosen his fossil fuel donors over the health and well-being of the people he serves. And going down, he suggests that his record shows disdain for the EPA's mission, that Americans trust the EPA, and that the American people will be shocked that the president-elect has chosen someone with such disdain for their health, and that will all come out as the hearings move along. You guys have a gut check on whether this sucker's going to make it?
Oh, I do not. His whole stable of nominees each brings with them controversy. So I don't know if one or two are not going to make it.
Well, the thing is there's in politics there's equity, there's capital that you move in and you pull out.
Yeah.
And believe me, there will be a lot of discussions and negotiations as to where those chips will or will not be moved in. I can't see them being moved in more than once. I just don't see it.
I would agree with that.
And so it'll be interesting when it comes to the Secretary of State choice and how he navigates the Russian conversation versus the EPA and da-da-da-da-da. My guess is the EPA guy could get chopped more. I don't think you want to shove the Secretary of State's nomination down the President-elect's throat. So this EPA thing may very well be hanging out there. Your thought on the politics?
Well, I think it's going to be, all of these will be opportunities for the opposition to bring up a series of issues. And Sheldon Whitehouse has signaled that he's going to bring up these donations to Scott Pruitt's campaigns as Attorney General in Oklahoma from the oil and gas industry, which according to I was just looking at the website of the National Institute for Money in State Politics, and it says that he's received $355,000 for state attorney general. That's a lot of money for their campaign. And then he's also passing on passing on letters written by oil industry attacking the EPA's efforts on climate change. So it's really not clear if there's really anything but the oil and gas industry there in the Attorney General's office in Oklahoma.
Well, we've got a whole bunch of paradoxical events here. I mean, we've got a former governor of Texas who wanted to end the Department of Energy, who's been named to run it.
Right.
So,
Indeed.
right. So, you know, it's a jump ball as far as I'm concerned. What most do you want Rhode Islanders to know about this conversation?
I want Rhode Islanders to actually focus on Rhode Island and on our environment and what we're doing and what we're not doing to protect it. I don't think there's a whole lot we can do in Washington. I think our delegation actually represents Rhode Island's love for the environment and care for it very well. And we will probably all be signing on to national coalition letters supporting this and opposing that. But we need to focus here. So that's what I would recommend that people do. We have a lot of unfinished business here that we have to take care of, including on climate change. The other thing that I'm concerned about is actually the Congress itself. So the day after the election, Speaker Paul Ryan specifically took aim at the Clean Water Act and regulations that are strangling businesses. And that is, to my mind, old thinking. And we have, I would say that Rhode Island is actually a great test case, an example of how when you invest in your environment, your economy flourishes. So look at all the industries that have cropped up around the cleanup of Narragansett Bay.
I don't know how anybody can disagree with that. I mean, in fact, I wish it would transfer to the highways. We're a pigsty in this state. And if we actually cleaned up the way the place looks, our economy might be in a whole lot better shape. That's a different conversation, but your thought and what you want Rhode Islanders to know.
Right, so I think Rhode Island actually, some of the states will keep going forward on climate change, even if, you know, Scott Pruitt and Rick Perry roll back the Clean Power Plan. That was, you know, the Obama administration's big effort on climate change. But we can move ahead, and we should, because there's real value in it. We can save a lot of money that we're now spending, about $3 billion a year out of our state economy for fossil fuels, of which we produce zero here, right? It's all money just pouring through our fingers. So that money, if we become more efficient, that money stays in the state. That's creating jobs as simple as a caulking gun, you know, guys blowing insulation into people's walls, putting up new windows, installing solar panels, you know, producing energy. You know, this is an opportunity for our state leaders like Gina Raimondo and Seth Magaziner to be national leaders, to bring our state from 4th place nationally in efficiency to 1st place, to, you know, instituting some very innovative policies that can make us really shine and I think be sort of a bridgehead into North America for investors from overseas. And we saw it with deep water wind. You know, while there's lots to worry about there, but there was an investment. Yeah. There's going to be more investments from Europe, from China.
Okay, good.
From
another conversation. You got the message. There'll be more conversation on it. Thanks, guys. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
You know, we're just going to have to follow this whole process in the EPA world because it is really almost a counterintuitive choice that Donald Trump has made. If he were grounded and we could follow his historic perspective on things environment, it'd be a little bit easier to reconcile all of this. I'm guessing my guests will return for more conversation as that thing goes. I'm going to take a couple of days off over the next couple of days, and you'll see a couple of programs that we think are interesting. We got a lot of response to Representative Maura Walsh, who is a breath of fresh air. You'll see her tomorrow night on Dan York's State of Mind. Good night.